You're not crazy. You're not weak. And no, you're not the problem. But if there's someone in your life who constantly drains your energy, twists your words, makes you feel guilty for having boundaries, punishes you for having needs, and leaves you emotionally wrecked after every interaction, you've probably spent months, maybe even years, wondering what the hell is wrong with you. You've questioned yourself over and over. Am I too sensitive? Maybe they didn't mean it like that. I don't want to overreact. Let me stop you right there. You're not overreacting. You've been trained to doubt your own reality. This video is not a motivational pep talk. This is a psychological intervention, a reality check. And maybe, if you're ready, a turning point. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Tolerating toxic behavior is not compassion. It's complicity. Every time you let someone violate your boundaries without consequence, you're not being nice. You're being slowly dismantled from the inside out. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a partner, a friend, a boss. And you tell yourself the same story on repeat. It's complicated. They've been through a lot. They don't know what they're doing. Or the most dangerous lie of all, I can handle it. But you're not supposed to have to handle it. That's not strength. That's survival mode. And surviving is not the same as living. Psychologist Dr. Henry Cloud discovered something terrifying. The people most likely to stay in toxic relationships are not broken, helpless victims. They're good people, empathetic people. People who were raised to believe that saying no makes you cruel, that protecting yourself is selfish, that unconditional love means enduring abuse silently. He calls this the martyr myth, the false belief that suffering is noble, that setting boundaries is an act of betrayal. But here's the brutal truth. What you allow, you encourage, and what you tolerate, you teach others to repeat. So let me ask you, how many more times are you going to justify disrespect? How many more sleepless nights, anxiety attacks, or moments of self-doubt will it take before you stop sacrificing your peace for the illusion of harmony? This is not a video about how to endure toxic people. This is a guide to reclaim your power, to dismantle the lies you've been told about loyalty, kindness, and guilt, and to finally understand that protecting your mental health is not a betrayal of others. It's an act of self-respect. By the end of this video, you'll have a step-by-step framework rooted in psychology for recognizing, confronting, and detaching from toxic dynamics. Whether that means rebuilding the relationship from the ground up or walking away for good, the power will be back in your hands. You're not stuck. You're not powerless. And no, you're not being dramatic. You're waking up. You know the behavior is toxic. You know how it makes you feel. But somehow you're still there, still replying to the messages, still picking up the phone, still showing up to the conversations you swore would be your last, still smiling at the table even as your stomach knots with dread. And the question that keeps echoing in your head is, why can't I just walk away? It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're naive. It's because, at some point in your life, you were conditioned, deeply and repeatedly, to believe that setting boundaries is a betrayal, that protecting yourself is selfish, that your value is measured by how much you can tolerate. Dr. Henry Cloud explains that people who struggle to leave toxic relationships have often internalized a dangerous belief system that goodness equals self-sacrifice, that being a good person means absorbing pain, swallowing anger, and enduring dysfunction in silence. That saying no is an act of cruelty, and leaving is an act of abandonment. But here's the paradox. The more you try to be good, the more permission you give to others to be cruel. This is especially true if the toxic person is someone you love, a parent, a sibling, a partner. Because when abuse wears the mask of love, it becomes almost impossible to name. How do you accuse someone of being toxic when they're also the person who raised you? Or when they say they love you right after they tear you down? This creates a psychological split. One part of you sees the damage clearly, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the erosion of your self-esteem. But another part clings to the good moments, the apologies, the promises, the occasional tenderness that makes you question if things are really that bad. This emotional tug-of-war keeps you stuck. You fantasize about leaving, but then guilt hijacks your mind. What if I'm being too harsh? They're going through a hard time, but they're my family. This guilt isn't accidental. It's manufactured. Toxic people often rely on guilt as a control mechanism. They weaponize your empathy. They train you to put their feelings above your own needs. And over time, they convince you that walking away isn't just painful, it's immoral. Let me tell you something you need to hear. You don't owe anyone your peace. Not because they gave birth to you, not because they stood by you in the past, not because they mean well. You are not obligated to bleed emotionally just because someone else refuses to stop cutting. Toxic relationships trap you by distorting your sense of self. They make you doubt your reality, question your worth, and abandon your own instincts in favor of keeping the peace. But the peace is a lie. It only exists when you're silent, when you shrink, when you disappear. And here's the twist. The more you appease, the worse it gets. Because toxic behavior feeds on compliance. The more you give, the more it demands. The moment you set a boundary, it fights back. Because now you're breaking the rules of the unspoken contract. You absorb my dysfunction, and in return, I don't abandon you. But that contract was never healthy. It was never love. It was control disguised as connection. So why haven't you left? Because no one ever taught you that you could. That changes today. And now that you've begun to see the pattern, the trap that's kept you paralyzed, it's time to look at the behavior itself, to strip away the excuses, the rationalizations, the guilt, and finally call it what it is. In the next part, we'll break down the exact signs of toxic behavior that reveal when a relationship is draining you instead of building you. You'll learn how to spot them and why recognizing them is the first act of liberation. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to understand toxic behavior through personality instead of patterns. But they're a good person. They didn't mean it. They've just been through a lot. We rationalize, we humanize, we overanalyze, and in doing so, we excuse. But Dr. Henry Cloud is clear. Toxicity isn't about someone's intentions or how charming they can be between the chaos. It's not about whether they have good days. It's about what they consistently do. Behavior doesn't lie. Patterns don't lie. And if someone's consistent behavior leaves you drained, anxious, afraid, or diminished, that's not a relationship. That's a slow erosion of your identity. Let's get brutally specific. A toxic person repeatedly violates your boundaries, not once, not twice, but as a pattern. You say, "Please don't yell at me," and they do it anyway. You ask for space, and they show up uninvited. You set a limit, and they ignore it or ridicule it. They don't forget your boundaries. They reject the idea that you have the right to set them. They never take responsibility. Nothing is ever their fault. If something goes wrong, it's because you misunderstood, overreacted, or made them act that way. They twist reality until you start apologizing for things you didn't even do. They shift blame so skillfully that you begin to question your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. They emotionally manipulate and make it look like love. They use guilt like a weapon. After everything I've done for you, they use shame to control. "You're so selfish. I can't believe you'd say that." They play the victim, always at the mercy of your alleged cruelty, while you're the one left walking on eggshells. They attack your identity, not your behavior. Instead of saying, "That action hurt me," they say, "You're a bad person." They don't critique with the intention to grow. They degrade to dominate. Their goal is not resolution, it's control. They create perpetual chaos. There's always a crisis, a problem, a drama. And you're always pulled into it, expected to fix, rescue, or take sides. You become the emotional dumping ground, the savior, the scapegoat, depending on what role benefits them most in that moment. They gaslight. They deny the reality of things you clearly experienced. That never happened. You're being too sensitive. You're imagining things. Over time, this warps your perception of reality until you don't trust your own mind. That's not a disagreement. That's psychological warfare. And finally, they don't reciprocate. The relationship is one way. You give, they take. You apologize, they demand more. You show up, they disappear. When you need them, they're suddenly busy, cold, or absent. And if you call them out, they'll flip the script and call you the toxic one. This is not just someone having flaws. Everyone has flaws. This is a consistent pattern of disregard, manipulation, boundary violation, and emotional sabotage. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to see clearly, because toxic dynamics normalize themselves through repetition. You adapt, you downplay, you survive. But now that you've seen the pattern, you can't unsee it. And that's good, because the next step is not just recognition, it's action. You need tools, not vague advice like just walk away, but real psychological strategies that protect your sanity and shift the power dynamic. Whether you're staying, distancing, or leaving, you must learn how to set limits that actually hold. In the next part, we'll break down exactly how to do that, and most importantly, how to follow through, even when your heart wants to back down. So, now you see it. The behavior isn't random. It's a pattern, and it's not going to stop on its own. Toxic people don't suddenly wake up and decide to respect your peace. They change when their behavior stops working, and that only happens when you do something most people never dare to do. Set boundaries and enforce them. Let's be clear, a boundary is not a request. It's not a plea. It's not an emotional appeal for someone to treat you better. A boundary is a line, and a line means this is where it ends. Not where it's negotiable, not where you hope they'll understand. It's where you say with action, not just words. If you cross this, there will be consequences. As Dr. Henry Cloud puts it, a boundary without a consequence is nothing more than a suggestion, and toxic people don't respond to suggestions. You want to reclaim your power? Here's the formula: clear, actionable, and non-negotiable. Step 1. Identify the specific behavior. Do not use vague language. Don't say, "You're toxic." That invites debate, deflection, and denial. Say exactly what is unacceptable. When you yell at me during disagreements, when you show up unannounced at my home, when you criticize me in front of others. Step 2. Set the boundary, clearly and calmly. You're not asking permission. You're stating a fact. I will no longer engage when you raise your voice. I need at least 24 hours notice before visits. I will not tolerate being insulted, even as a joke. Step 3. Communicate the consequence. Here's the key. The boundary means nothing if crossing it doesn't cost something, and the consequence must be immediate, specific, and within your control. If you yell, I will walk away from the conversation. If you come over uninvited, I won't open the door. If you insult me again, I will end the call immediately. Step 4. Follow through every single time. The first time you don't enforce a boundary, you've just trained the other person to ignore it. Toxic people will test you, expect pushback, guilt-tripping, even rage. Why? Because they're losing control. And when you begin to act from clarity instead of fear, the entire dynamic shifts. Let me be blunt. If you set a boundary and cave the moment it's challenged, you're not setting a boundary. You're making a threat you won't enforce. And that teaches toxic people exactly what they wanted to hear. They don't really mean it. That's why boundaries are not just words. They are commitments to yourself. They are acts of self-respect. They are lines drawn not to punish others, but to protect your peace. This will feel uncomfortable. You will be called names: cold, selfish, cruel, dramatic. But let me tell you something. Every time someone calls you selfish for having boundaries, what they really mean is, you stopped serving my dysfunction. Good. Let them feel that loss. It's the only thing some people understand. But what if they start arguing with you? What if they keep pushing, demanding explanations, and trying to debate your right to protect yourself? That's when the next strategy becomes your lifeline. In the next part, we're going to dive into a powerful psychological tool that stops manipulation in its tracks by eliminating the one thing toxic people rely on most: your need to explain yourself. By now, you've probably noticed a frustrating pattern. The moment you set a boundary, the toxic person doesn't just back off, they double down. They question you, corner you, demand a reason. And if you're like most people who were conditioned to be nice, you fall into the trap. You start explaining. You over-justify. You offer every possible reason to make them understand. But here's the truth you need to face. They don't want to understand. Understanding isn't their goal. Control is. And every time you explain yourself, you're opening a door they will walk through to dismantle your boundary from the inside out. That's why Dr. Henry Cloud teaches what he calls the broken record technique, one of the most powerful, non-reactive tools for maintaining control in the face of emotional manipulation. It works like this. You state your boundary, calmly, clearly. Then, when the toxic person pushes, argues, shames, or guilt-trips you, you do not engage in the content of their manipulation. You do not defend, you do not explain, you do not escalate. You repeat your boundary, word for word, again and again and again, like a broken record, emotionless, consistent, firm. Let me give you an example. You say, "I'm not available for that conversation." They respond, "Wow, so now I can't even talk to you after everything I've done?" You repeat, "I'm not available for that conversation." They escalate. "This is exactly why no one wants to be around you. You're selfish. You've changed." You stay grounded. "I'm not available for that conversation." No matter what they throw at you, accusations, insults, guilt, emotional blackmail, you do not change your script. That's the power of the broken record. It removes the oxygen that fuels manipulation, your emotional reaction. Because the moment you start defending yourself, you've taken the bait. You've entered their reality. And in their reality, your boundary becomes a debate, not a fact. The goal here isn't to convince them. The goal is to hold your line. This technique isn't passive. It's master-level emotional detachment. It's what happens when you stop trying to win the argument and instead refuse to play the game altogether. Yes, it will feel unnatural at first, especially if you've spent your life walking on eggshells, trying to avoid conflict, trying to be reasonable. But here's the truth no one told you. Toxic people don't respond to reason. They respond to resistance. And resistance in this case means silence, repetition, detachment, power. Eventually, they'll get the message. Maybe not immediately, maybe not without a fight. But every time you refuse to feed their chaos, they lose leverage. Every time you stay grounded in your no, they feel the shift. They realize you're no longer someone they can move with words. But what happens when words aren't the main tool of control? What if the toxic person thrives on drama, on chaos, on stirring up reactions not through arguments, but through emotional provocation? In that case, you need a different strategy, one that turns you into the least interesting target they've ever encountered, one that makes you invisible to their dysfunction. In the next part, we'll explore the psychological art of becoming so emotionally unreactive that the toxic person loses all interest in engaging with you. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Some toxic people don't argue. They don't beg or plead. They don't even try to reason with you. They thrive on drama. They feed off your emotional reactions, rage, tears, defensiveness, anxiety. It's all fuel to them. And when you take that bait, even with the best intentions, you re-enter the cycle. You give them exactly what they need to maintain control: your attention, your energy, your emotional presence. This is where the grey rock method becomes your lifeline. The idea is simple. You make yourself so boring, so unreactive, so emotionally flat, that the toxic person loses interest because there's nothing left to extract from you. The term comes from a visual. A grey rock is dull, ordinary, unremarkable. It draws no attention. It offers no reward. It sits, it exists. And that's exactly what you become. You don't fight. You don't defend. You don't perform. You don't feed the dynamic with emotional engagement, because that's what they're addicted to. Let's walk through it in practice. Imagine a toxic person makes a passive-aggressive comment. "Oh, I see you're too important to call back these days." The old you would have panicked, rushed to explain, overcompensated, maybe even lashed out, then felt guilty for doing so. The grey rock version of you respond with, or "I've been busy." And then you change the subject, or say nothing at all. Your tone is neutral, your face is calm, your energy is low. You strip the interaction of emotional reward, no visible irritation, no internal justifications, no subtle sighs or sarcastic comebacks. You become unreadable, forgettable, a dead end for emotional drama. This method is particularly powerful with narcissists, manipulators, and emotional vampires. People who seek to destabilize you so they can position themselves as the only source of validation or control. And let's be clear, they will escalate. At first, they will poke harder, get louder, try more outrageous things to get a rise out of you. They're testing to see if the new you is real or just a performance. But if you remain still, calm, disinterested, unfazed, they eventually lose interest. Because a toxic person doesn't want connection. They want control. No emotional response means no power over you. Now, does this mean you become cold, robotic, or dead inside? No. It means you choose when and where to bring your emotional energy. You no longer let it be hijacked by someone who only wants to use it as leverage. It means you save your emotional richness for people who deserve it, and not for those who turn your empathy into a weapon. But what if the toxic person is a family member or a co-worker? Someone you can't cut off completely, at least not right away. That's where we take the grey rock strategy and scale it, adjust it for real life, create space within constraints. You don't have to go no contact to regain control. Sometimes, low contact is the smarter, safer first step. In the next part, we'll explore exactly how to manage relationships you can't fully escape, reduce exposure, and start building an exit strategy if needed. Sometimes the toxic person isn't someone you can just block and forget. Maybe they're your parent, your sibling, your boss, your spouse, someone embedded in your life through history, obligation, or necessity, and you feel trapped. You've probably told yourself, cutting them off isn't realistic. Or worse, if I go no contact, I'm just as bad as them. This is where the nuance matters, because Dr. Henry Cloud makes it clear, not all toxicity requires total exile, but it does require a decision. And that decision starts with boundaries of proximity. Think of it as a spectrum. At one end, no contact, the clean break, the hard line, the total removal of access. On the other end, low contact, strategic distance, reduced exposure, minimized engagement. Low contact isn't weakness, it's intelligence. Let's say your toxic person is a family member who always ruins holidays with emotional outbursts and guilt trips. You don't have to go to every dinner. You don't have to stay for 6 hours. You don't have to go alone. You can arrive late, leave early, bring support, and plan your exit in advance. Low contact looks like setting strict time limits for interactions. Only meeting in public or group settings, never alone. Keeping communication text-based to avoid real-time manipulation. Taking longer to respond, on purpose. Sharing less, revealing nothing personal, refusing emotional bait. It's you reclaiming space without needing to justify it. And for some, low contact is enough. It creates enough distance for your peace to breathe. But let's not lie to ourselves. In many cases, no contact becomes necessary. When the person is abusive, when boundaries are chronically violated, when your mental health is deteriorating and every interaction feels like emotional war. No contact is not revenge. It's not spite. It's survival. It means blocking numbers, cutting off social media access, informing mutual contacts you're no longer in communication, resisting the urge to check in or monitor, breaking the trauma bond by refusing to re-engage, even when they bait you with apologies, nostalgia, or sudden crises. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because you'll grieve not just the person, but the fantasy of who you hoped they could be. But that grief is sacred. It's the cost of freedom. And here's what no one tells you. You don't need their permission to protect your peace. You don't need the world to understand your decision. The only validation you need is the silence you feel when they're no longer in your head, no longer dictating your emotional weather. You're allowed to stop bleeding for people who never learned how to stop cutting. So ask yourself, honestly, what level of access does this person truly deserve? Based not on guilt, not on obligation, but on impact. If their presence repeatedly harms your nervous system, drains your energy, and damages your self-worth, then yes, reducing or ending that connection may be the most loving act of self-respect you'll ever commit. And maybe no one ever told you this before, so let me say it now. You have permission to say no, to step back, to walk away, to not explain, to rebuild your life without them in it. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what boundary do you know you need to set, but have been avoiding? What relationship are you reevaluating after hearing this? Your story matters, and sharing it might help someone else finally see their own clearly. And before you go, don't stop here. Make sure you watch the next video too. What you just learned is powerful, but there's something else you need to understand to complete this transformation. Trust me, it's important. Keep watching.